When setting up our switch infrastructure, we need to configure the switches potentially for remote management, which means give it an IP address. We may want to configure the interfaces or the switch ports for things like speed or duplexness or MDI, MDX negotiations. So let's take a look at the configurations that we'd use for our switches. So in our standard configuration we've been using here, we want to take a look at the switches and the switch configuration. So the switches and the switch configuration for us are SW1 and SW2. So we'll just take a look at one of these for now and go through the configuration pieces. So what do I care about my switch? Well, one thing is I can give it an IP address. And notice I said I can give it an IP address. I do not need to give my switch an IP address. Switches do not need them. Switches are layer 2 devices for us. They make their decisions based off MAC address. It has nothing to do with an IP. If you never gave your switch an IP, it would be just fine. However, anytime you wanted to manage that switch, if you wanted to change a setting, you would have to go to the closet, plug your console cable in, and make your changes. And I would much rather be telnetting or SSHing into my device from a distance. In order to do that, I have to give it an IP address. When we give the switch an IP address, we actually give it to the switch virtual interface, or again in our case, our management interface, which would be VLAN 1. So VLAN 1 is the name of the interface that we're actually going to use to configure the switch or to give the switch an IP address. Let me jump into switch 1 here. If I look at switch 1, console, I did it again, C-O-N-S-O-L-E, there we go, console, enable, Cisco, same password combination we've been using for other devices, and do a show run. Again, very similar to what we had with our routers we've been looking at, with our console lines and our VTY lines, and all the interfaces we have. They're called interfaces. Technically, they're switch ports. There's my secret password, but I don't have an IP address configured here. I don't have any interfaces configured for them. If I do a show IP int brief, again, we can see that we have all the interfaces and this VLAN 1 interface, which is currently administratively down, but nothing has IP addresses. Again, we would not expect these interfaces 1 through 24, but I would expect VLAN 1, if I wanted to manage it, to have an IP address. So how do we do it? Well, it's an interface. So how do I configure the IP? Global config, and then interface VLAN 1. I switch to config-if. I'm going to give it an IP address, just like we did in the past, 192.168. This is on the 10 network, 10. Well, I'm going to start at the range, at the back end of my range. So I've reserved addresses 1 through 9 as static addresses for devices on my network, so I'll pick 9 for my switch just for the sake of doing it. I do need to supply the mask for it because I'm actually assigning an address to it, and there we go. So what if I were to telnet into this switch now from my local PC? Will that work? It should work for me. Telnet 192.168.10.9. Connection timed out. Did we not just configure this thing? What happened? So let's do a show IP int brief. Do show IP int brief. Anybody want to guess before we see the display? Remember the administratively shut down? What did that mean? That meant the interface is shut down. If the interface is shut down, then you can't talk. You have to bring the interface up. So the shutdown command has been issued against VLAN 1. So how do we fix that? Haha, you got it. No shutdown brings the interface up. Once the interface comes up, we change state to up. Everything's working for me. Now I should be able to telnet just fine. Let's try that again. Connection timed out. Look at it one more time. Let's make sure that the interface is up. Show IP end brief. Says it's up, says it's running. So what else could be the problem? You suppose that I don't have an IP address on my PC? I don't have an address on my PC. Notice that address. What is that address that we see? Here's my auto configuration address, 169.254. That would be the APIPA address. Remember the APIPA address from previous? That was the automatically assigned address when your machine is set up for DHCP and there's no DHCP server. So we had DHCP set up on this machine. We need to go back to static. If I look at my configuration, there's my DHCP. I don't have a DHCP server. Again, this is that basis for troubleshooting. Look at what you know. Look at the information that you have. Go into my static IP address configuration, 192.168.10.100 with a standard mask, and we'll do our default gateway of 192.168.10.1. We should be good to know. Let's try this one. Take 3. Let's try this again. Command prompt. Telnet to 192.168.10.9. Dun, dun, dun. Telnet is my password, and I'm in to switch 1. Success. So that works out well for me. Can I manage this device from the other side? What if I were sitting on my server? Let me bring my server interface down. My server interface. Let's check our IP address configuration. Okay, we got one. We don't want to get caught with that again. Let's go back to my desktop. Oops, sorry. There it is. There's my little close. And let me bring up a command prompt and let me telnet to, let me see if I can ping my, well, I'll telnet right to my switch. Telnet to 192.168.10.9, which was my switch. And no success. Connection timed out. Seems like everything is up and running. What do we do now? Well, do we have a path? We should have everything running. I mean, we haven't changed anything, right? We have network paths. If I look at R2, my routing protocol should be running. I should know where show IP route. There's my static out to 10, so I have a path. What could the problem be? If we were to actually trace it and we were to put this in simulation mode, we would see the packet. We would actually see this packet go across, and we'll get rid of that for now. We would see the packet when I was trying to telnet from here. We would see the packet go all the way up. It would make it over. It would get down to the switch. It would actually die at the switch, because the switch would be responding back to 30.200, and the switch doesn't know how to get there. What do you mean it doesn't know how to get there? Well, how does a PC know? How does the PC get there? Well, the PC uses its default gateway. The default gateway is the router interface. When the PC doesn't know what to do with the packet, it says, it's not on my network. I'll send it to the router, and the router will know where to go. It's because we configured the default gateway. We did not configure a default gateway on the router, on the switch. So when the packet comes back to the switch, it needs to go to the 30 network. The switch goes, hey, that's not on my network, and I don't have a default router configured, so I don't know where to go. So the fact that we didn't configure this default router here means that we can only manage it locally. Again, maybe that's a security thing for you. Maybe you want to only be on the local network with the switch when you're managing it. Don't give it a default gateway. It can never be managed from outside of its network. It can't talk outside of its network. If we want it to be able to talk outside the network, if that's the configuration that we want, then we need to go into the switch and add that default network configuration. If I go into my switch and in global configuration, say default interface, no, it's IP default. IP default gateway, 192.168.10.1, which is my router interface. Save that. Just go right straight back to my server, do the same exact thing we did before, 10.9, and we are in. Because our switch now knew how to get out of the network. Password telnet, telnet. I'm into switch 1. Again, there's my prompt changes. We know we're actually in switch 1. It's no trick. Again, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but again, things that if you forget to do them somehow can lead you awry there. Other configuration parameters that we might want to take a look at in the switch is the speed or the interface settings. So again, if I look at my running config, show run, there's all my interfaces. They're all set up for nothing. They have nothing configured. So what speed, what duplex are they actually running at? And if we talk about duplex, When we look at a normal communication that we might have on a switch, so if I have a switch that's sitting here and I'm communicating out to a PC, in Ethernet, back in the day, we were on a coaxial cable. You could only ever have one device talking at a time, so a device that's on the wire is either transmitting or receiving, because you can only ever have one frame. Once we go to a switch infrastructure, I can actually have my switch control who hears what. So technically, this device right here is in its own private collision domain. That device could talk and listen at the same time. If it's a coaxial cable, you can't, because you're only sharing one conductor, but we don't have that. What we have is we have a transmit pair and we have a receive pair. So the transmit pair from the switch can be talking to my PC, while my switch is actually listening to my PC talking. If I can do both at the same time, it's called full duplex. If we wanted to emulate, maybe this thing was a hub, maybe we had some reason why we didn't want the PC talking and listening at the same time, then it's either transmitting or receiving. That's half duplex. If it can only do one or the other, then we're running in half duplex mode. So what is this interface running at? Well, I suppose we could take a look. We could do a show interface and actually see. If I go back to my switch and do a show interface, and I don't want to see them all, so I'm just going to do show interface F5Avideo5 and look at it. I can see that F5Avideo5 is actually running in full duplex at 100 megabits. That doesn't mean that's what it's configured for. That means that's what it's running as. So how do I know what it's configured for? Well, what are my options, I guess, is probably a better question. Well, I can be running in full duplex. I can be running in half duplex. I can run at 10, 100, maybe 1,000, depending on the switch. But there's also a functionality called auto. It's auto sensing or auto detect. And that would be the default. But if that's there, why doesn't it show me? When I do a show run, why can't I see what interface Fast Ethernet 01 is running in? And that's because Cisco, in most cases, doesn't show us the defaults. If I were to change that configuration away from default, I would actually see it in here. Well, let's try it. So if I were to global config, conf T, go to interface F5Avideo5, and I'm going to change the duplex to, and there's my choices, auto, full, or half. I'm going to change it to full duplex manually. So I'm going to hard code it to full duplex. What about the speed? Same thing. I have my speed functionality. I can set it to 10, 100, or auto. So I'll set my speed to 100. That's what it was set for, speed 100. Now I've hard coded. I've actually set it for the 100 megabit speed. Do show run. See the parameters in here? I now actually have them listed. I have the parameters of full duplex and speed 100 listed. It is now configured manually. So you can see what they're set for. Well, how did I know what the defaults were? Well, if you set it back to the default, those terms will actually disappear. If I set this for auto, if I set duplex for auto, that duplex full will go away, and I will not see the duplex auto command because that's the default. So let's try that. If I go back and say duplex auto, do show run, the duplex went away now. I still see the speed because I hard coded it to speed 100. If I want that to go away as well, again, I don't really want it to go away, I suppose, but to show you to go back to where we were, if again you're trying to find out what the defaults are, you would change a parameter to a non-default parameter. Once you change it to non-default, it will show up in your running config. If you change it back to speed auto, do show run, whoops, went too far there, back to interface 01, it doesn't show me anything again. I now have set them back to the default. So speed auto, duplex auto are the default configurations. Just bear in mind that when you actually do the show interface F5Avideo5, do show interface F5Avideo5, it shows me what they're actually running in here. This is running in full duplex, 100 megabits. If I were to change my configuration back, speed 100, duplex, full, do show int F5Avideo5, this parameter is going to be exactly the same. You cannot tell from show int what you're running in. you can't tell what it's configured for. You can tell what it's running at, what speed, what mode it's running at, but you can't tell how it's configured. You have to look at the running config for that.